Aloha and welcome to our first informational video for this class. We're going to go through all the lessons and I'll give you a brief overview of what to expect as you go through the lesson. Our first lesson in the course is what is earth science. So simply our goals for this video and for the lesson are to define the terms of hypothesis and theory, to describe what earth science is, and then finally to describe the formation of the earth and the solar system. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is a hypothesis and a theory. See what the difference is between the two. A hypothesis is a possible explanation for a given observation. So if you make an observation and you try and explain it, that's going to be a hypothesis. However, it has to be testable. That's why we do experimentation in science, and you can have more than one. Now, when we test them in these experiments, we're seeing whether or not our explanation holds up to further observations. If these hypotheses survive all of this testing and they outlast their competing ones, then it becomes what we call a theory. And theories are well tested and widely accepted explanations for observable facts. So a hypothesis starts off with a simple, testable explanation for what we see, and if we test it and it survives, then ultimately it will be accepted and become a theory. Now, one thing you'll hear a lot about in science is what we call the scientific method. And we're kind of taught that a scientific method is a series of steps that we take to do science. But if you notice down here, we see that it's not exactly a simple series. We always want to basically start with an observation. When you have the observation, it's going to prompt you to ask a question. And when you ask a question, then you come up with a solution, which is your hypothesis. Now, your hypothesis is going to lead you into what we call prediction. What do you think is going to happen? Based on your explanation, what would we expect to see? We'll experiment with it, we gather more data, we analyze the data, and then we have to evaluate our hypothesis. If it's wrong, we come back. If it's right, then we continue. We'll ask further questions, we'll make further observations, and the whole cycle continues. So the scientific method is more of a guide system. Make sure that we're doing it the right way. It's not a simple series of steps. Okay. So when we're talking about earth science, we're talking about studying this little happy guy right here, the earth. Okay? As we study the earth, we realize that the earth is made up of several different things. There's the air, and that study is called meteorology. There's water, which is primarily oceanography, but we can also call it hydrology. We have study of the land and geology, and study of life, which is biology. When we're studying the earth and we're studying all these different pieces and parts and how they interact with each other, that's why we call it a system science. In earth science, we also look in astronomy and we look out into the universe so that we can see how we fit into the universe. So it's kind of the study of the earth and its components, but also how the earth fits into the universe as well. So one of the simple questions you get asked all the time is, how did the earth form? And we currently believe in the Nebular Hypothesis, the nebular theory. And what that means is that a long time ago, 4.5 billion years ago, there was a nebula in space. And that's basically a cloud of dust and gases, primarily hydrogen and helium and some of the heavier elements. And what we noticed is that that nebula that was out there started to rotate. So we started to see a little bit of rotation. It collapsed in upon itself. And as it did so, we started seeing a lot of mass collect in the center, and that's where we formed our sun. But we also had this disk of residual matter that was cooling as well. And as it cooled, it allowed it to form rocks and to form solid substances. Now those solid substances down here started to collide with one another and form larger substances, and ultimately those collisions cleared the pathway for our planets and the other objects of our solar system. And we'll talk more about the solar system a little bit later on. Now, as the Earth cooled, what we noticed is it formed these different layers, and we can kind of see them here in the picture. What we notice is that the heavier elements like your iron and your nickel and things of that nature, they settled in to form this inner core here. And as we move outward from the inner core, we notice that the materials tend to be a little bit lighter in nature. So density had a play into forming these different layers of the Earth. And we'll study these different layers as the course continues. So that's it for our video on this lesson. Now you have a worksheet to complete for the lesson, and then go through the lesson while you're doing the worksheet and take a quiz on it, and then we'll move on. So good luck, enjoy the lesson, and we'll see you in the next video.